Harold is very shy. Harold, could you please wave to everybody?
Hello, Harold.
Harold is my friend who lives with our other friend, Hermione. They live on a shelf above my desk, and Hermione is a dragon. Someday I will bring Hermione when it suits the sermon. I can't imagine there are dragons in any of our lives, right? Well, Harold this morning was very excited. He told me that he went out last night to help the Easter Bunny deliver baskets. He's a little tired. But he told me something really interesting happened last night. You know what happened? First, he told me that they ran over the tooth fairy. I was shocked. And then he said, no, I heard it wrong. They ran into the tooth fairy. The tooth fairy is not happy with the Easter Bunny. The tooth fairy is tired of getting teeth with cavities in them. Have you all been brushing your teeth?
Yes.
Harold is so relieved. Anyway, Harold and I thought it would be really interesting for us to talk about why we have bunnies at Easter and why they bring eggs. Milo, I bet you know the story. Why?
It's like to celebrate all the bunnies
Having babies. Oh yes, that's the beginning. Yes. So long ago, before your grandparents, before their grandparents, and before their grandparents, people used to live really close to the earth. They were really involved when the seasons changed. You know, when it got hot in the summer, they were very interested in preserving meat for the winter, growing crops or gathering crops, and making sure that they had enough to eat when the growing season stopped in the fall. So there they were in the winter around their fires, where they repaired their tools, where they made clothing, and where they told stories. And then, towards the end of winter, they were really longing for spring to come. And you know how they knew spring was coming? When they started seeing more bunnies bouncing around, and they thought, spring is coming. Let's follow the bunnies because they know where all the good food is, right? All the lettuce and all the good grasses. So then they realized that bunnies were a symbol for spring, and they started doing things like gathering eggs and decorating them and giving them as gifts to each other, because eggs also symbolized rebirth. So that's why you get eggs, and that's why they're bunnies. Yes, Milo?
way back, did they just use like actual eggs?
Actual eggs. Do you believe that?
Did they eventually
Did they eventually
just hatch?
hatch? You know, I don't know. I wasn't there. I'm not that old. Really. But maybe. Who knows? But anyway, so that's why we have bunnies at Easter and eggs. And I know that you are really anxious to go and gather some eggs, aren't you? And to go and look in the yard. But Harold's going to wave goodbye. Bye-bye. Will you join me in a moment of prayer and reflection? Spirit of life and love, we greet you on this Easter Sunday with a heart longing for peace and a mind knowing that there is work to do and a long road to walk. Let us be grateful that we are doing this together in community where we can encourage and love each other through the tough days and the good days. Let us bring our whole selves to this work as we move forward together. We'll now spend some time in meditation and prayer.
Now we're going to sing, at least I'm going to sing, the MAP song. You don't know the MAP song. It's not in your hymnal. Okay. I'll do my best. I sang this before with a slightly higher voice because I was a lot younger. There's nothing so great as a map. It'll pull you right out of a trap. There's pleasure in knowing just where you're going. There's nothing so great as a map. You can see why I'm not a member of the UUFRC. Okay. I need to see where I'm going. So I wrote that when I was 8 years old, sitting in the back seat of my parents' car, tracing the colored lines of a AAA road map with my finger. I grew up loving maps because they were comforting. They told you where you were. They gave shape to the world. And that love led me to a career analyzing imagery. I became expert at a skill, taking images and extracting meaning from them. Eventually, I found myself working on a research project funded by the government. It was ambitious. Automated cartography. Feed images into software and have the software produce maps. Presto. We were working with Stanford and Berkeley, so we were not biased one way. Yeah. The Stanford group was led by a guy named Tom Binford. He was a research professor. He was extracting edges, roads, and boundaries from images. And the Berkeley group was led by a guy named Mike Stonebreaker, and he'd built a database, you might have heard of it, called Postgres. It was able to store geometric objects. And I had a crazy idea, but those are the best kinds of ideas. If you wanted to get 3D information from images, you needed a stereo pair. It's the way we see, left and right. Two images are taken in a very controlled way, and without that, you were stuck. You couldn't do it. And what I envisioned, and what hadn't ever been done before, was a way around that. So I discovered how you could take any two images and recover three-dimensional information from them. It took me months to prove it out, and it worked. In theory, in the lab, and on real data. And I did even more. I took the edge detection stuff from Stanford and the geometric database from Berkeley, and I made them talk to each other. The system took images, found structures, placed them in 3D space, and stored them as map features. Automatically. It was beautiful. It was one of the best things I've ever done. Okay. The government noticed it. They sent 4 double-wrap packages containing classified 8mm tapes to me. And I ran my software on it, and I built 3D models of airfields. The government was very happy. They had the enabling technology that they were looking for. But I noticed something. On the inner envelope of each package, there was something called a BE number. And I asked somebody who knew, what did BE mean? And I was told it stood for Basic Encyclopedia, an index number. Yeah, it made sense to me. Years later, I said this to somebody, they were talking about BE numbers, and they laughed in my face. I said, that's not what it stands for. That's not what BE stands for. It stands for bombing. I'd asked a simple question before, and I got a simple answer. A lie. I believed it for years without question. Then a man named Gene from a place in Lockheed I'd never heard of before, called Missiles and Fire Control, called me, profusely thankful. He said my software was being used. They had put it into a guidance system of a JDAM missile. It was now being tested at Redstone Arsenal. My mathematics, my code was inside a weapon. I woke up at 2 in the morning on March 1st, 2026, and I turned on the TV, of course, CNN. CNN informed me we were at war. The United States had hit targets in Iran. I saw footage of bombing an airfield. Planes arranged on a tarmac. Hangars. I recognized it instantly. It was the same facility I had modeled 23 years before from those tapes. In that moment, I became violently physically ill. I knew the missile that struck carried software built on the mathematics I created. I wasn't building a bomb. My goal wasn't to build a weapon. If you look at my work, and you can do it, it's patent 7343035. It's all about maps, geometry, measurement, understanding the world. Before my work, doing what that missile did required careful planning and tasking. Afterwards, it got far easier. I didn't create the intent, and I didn't declare the war, but I removed the barrier. I carry that for the rest of my life. There isn't any neat, happy resolution. No lesson that makes it okay. But there are two things I came to realize that might matter to someone else, somebody here. I'm here to tell you what they are so you avoid my situation if you can. The first, the pure and more abstract an idea is, the more dual use it becomes. I chased beauty and elegance, solving something that had never been solved before. Ideas don't tell you where they will go. The same insight that maps a city can guide a missile to destroy it. The second, inventing something is 1/3 of the job. We celebrate breakthroughs, the moment of discovery, but that's just the beginning. The harder part is asking, what can this become? What can people do with it beyond my control? And then asking the hardest question, do I want to release it? Once it leaves your hands, it's no longer yours. It's the property of the world. I didn't ask those questions as I was focused on following something that felt right, elegant, and beautiful. I didn't see it where it could go. March 1st, 2026, I saw. There's nothing so great as a map. It'll pull you right out of a trap. There's pleasure in knowing just where you're going. There's nothing so great as a map. May we always ask where we're going and where we may go when we are no longer at the helm. May we seek peace and humanity in all our undertakings, and may the seeds of our work bear kind harvest. Amen.
I begin this morning with words from Wendell Berry. It's hard to have hope. It is harder as you grow old, for hope must not depend on feeling good. And there's the dream of loneliness at absolute midnight. You also have withdrawn belief in the present reality of the future, which surely will surprise us. And hope is harder when it cannot come by prediction any more than by wishing. But stop dithering. The young ask the old to hope. What will you tell them? Tell them at least what you say to yourself. Because we have not made our lives to fit our places. The forests are ruined, the fields eroded, the streams polluted, the mountains overturned. Hope then belongs to your place by your own knowledge of what it is that no other place is, and by your caring for it, as you care for no other place. This knowledge cannot be taken from you by power or by wealth. It will stop your ears to the powerful when they ask for your faith, and to the wealthy when they ask for your land and your work. Be still and listen to the voices that belong to the stream banks and the trees and the open fields. Find your hope, then, on the ground under your feet, your hope of heaven. Let it rest on the ground underfoot. The world is no better than its places. Its places at last are no better than their people, while their people continue in them. When the people make the dark the light within them, the world darkens. Wendell Berry has captured what some of us are feeling all of the time lately, and what all of us feel sometimes when we are tired or discouraged, or just feeling that our work isn't helping. It's easy to fall into that place when we look around at what's happening in the world, and we wonder, will it ever get better? I've spoken to you before about the importance of looking for the good things around you to find your good fortune. But how can we plant that in our lives so that the world will become more of what we want to see? I love this time of year. As winter starts to recede and new leaves appear on the trees, I feel myself coming alive again after the doldrums of winter. Although winter here in California is so much easier on my body and soul and psyche than it was in Chicago. My father used to say, every winter gets harder, and he was right. I feel the rhythms of nature playing within me. Watching the jasmine plants budding out and the roses form new leaves always gives me such a lift. I feel hopeful just watching it all unfold in my yard. It's around Easter every year when I start thinking about what I'm going to plant in my vegetable garden. When I lived in Chicago, I had balcony gardens off my apartment, so I was excited when my husband and I had a yard with our first house in Southern California. We spent time deciding what to plant, and a lot of time and money at our local garden center, and many Saturdays planting and tending what can only be described that first year at our attempt at an urban farm. Lettuces, beans, peas, strawberries, and 23 tomato plants. Yeah, 23. This was the first year that tomato mania had come to Southern California, and to say that I was excited by all the varieties would be an understatement. And guess who spent much of the month of August canning? When we first planted the seeds in spring, I would hover over them like an anxious mother, and one day when they sprouted, I ran in the house excitedly to tell Bob. He looked confused and told me, if you plant seeds and water them, this is kind of what you can expect. Okay, so he grew up in a ranch in the valley and was used to this. I was too, to some extent, but that day it seemed to me to be a miracle. Gardening makes me so happy. And frankly, I don't think I've ever met a pessimistic gardener. You have to have a hopeful attitude when you plant seeds. Otherwise, why bother? So to stretch this gardening metaphor a little further, what are we planting? What seeds of hope do we see all around us, and how can we encourage them? And what can we plant in the ground that looks barren? It's easy to latch on to the horrific news of the atrocities around the world, but how do we hang on to the light within us, as Wendell Berry says? I start by seeing where I can plant some joy. One of my local baristas has dyed her hair the most unusual pink-orangey color. I would never attempt that, but it looks fabulous on her. When I tell her that, she beams. What did that cost me? And frankly, she seemed to walk a little lighter after that. I make an effort to get to know my neighbors, not just the ones that live on either side of me. Bob and I found very early that this was crucial during earthquakes, wildfires, and an auto accident that happened 2 doors down. checking in on each other, watching each other's properties when they were out of town, sharing garden produce, makes me feel connected to a place and a people, especially when I get to know them and I learn their stories. I know that there are many here that volunteer their time for organizations that they believe are making a difference. And many of you work in professions that serve the greater good. You are planting hope. The Easter story reminds us that death is not the end. Scientists will tell you that we're all made of energy and that it can be transformed but never destroyed. I found that thought planted a deeply spiritual and hopeful truth in me. Even if you don't believe that Jesus died and rose again and view the story as a metaphor, I think an important lesson for us to realize is that the end of something is always the beginning of something else. Much can be lost, but much can also be gained. And frankly, I find it interesting that Jesus arose out of a tomb in the ground, another metaphor for the birth and renewal that comes every spring. His rebirth was hopeful to those living under that authoritarian Roman regime. As Paul said in his reflection, we often build things seeded with hope that grow into things we can't foresee. Sometimes those things are good and positive, but even the best creations can be twisted with bad intent and can be used for destruction instead of creation. Sometimes the words we speak or actions we take with the best of intentions can be interpreted in ways we could not have realized at the time. So should we stop speaking, stop trying to help, and make our corner of the garden more beautiful and thriving? How do we proceed? I see so many seeds of hope planted right here at UUFRC. Our work on voting rights, collaboration with Faith in Action, climate justice reform, just to name a few. You are a people of faith who put your values into action every day. And your leadership works tirelessly to make sure that even if you're not sitting at the table where decisions are made, your values are respected and heard. And I must tell you something that's happened here in the last 2 weeks that has me hopeful for all of us in our corner of the world here at UUFRC. As Jason and I wrote you earlier this week, we had a former unhoused congregant come to our door asking to be housed here at the church. Many in the leadership, along with some of our congregants, became involved to make sure that they had temporary housing and access to local resources. There was much time and energy spent making sure that we were responding in a way that was helpful to them, our staff, and our congregation. I have been so moved and inspired watching the leadership grapple with this issue with such heart, compassion, and empathy. And I must tell you that I believe we will see more people arrive at our doors as the economy worsens. This person was only the second that had come here looking for help in the first 6 weeks I was with you. And know that we are not easy to find if you don't know about us. We're far from downtown and there's no bus stop nearby. As a result of this, the board has asked the Social Action Council to provide local resources so that we can have a list ready to hand out when someone comes looking for help. You should be so proud of yourselves and the leadership that you've elected to represent you. They are, with so much thought and love, living our values. We are seeding hope every day, sometimes unintentionally, sometimes in reaction to those things we see around us. may we know that the seeds we plant today will sprout tomorrow, and may we nurture them to the glory of life.